Good morning, everyone. We have now we're getting more and more participants entering, so we're probably just going to wait for a few minutes until we see those slowing down. We are going to be talking with you about Medicare, the individual and the employer. And yeah, it's looking like people are excited for this fabulous discussion.
I'm always
So
amazed.
hang in there for a few. We have a thunderstorm going on in Dallas and various other challenges in other locations. So we're just going to see how this goes. This may be a little inside baseball today, and we're going to limp along as best we can.
We're going to do our best.
We are. Okay. All right. We're kind of slowing down. Watching the numbers go up, it's sort of like cooking popcorn in a microwave. You want to open it when you start to hear the pop slow down.
I really like that analogy. We're going to have to use that again. It's exactly what it's like. It's like, oh, it stopped. Oh, no, there it goes again.
Yeah,
I think it's
going
slow.
up a little bit.
It's going up.
It really is. People are joining.
Yeah.
I can't see it. I'm glad I can't. Then I can just pretend I'm talking to just you two.
Exactly. Please, Lisa, that's all you need to do.
And everyone should know that today we're going to have Lisa joining us. She's going to be talking. I'm in the background. Claire and Lisa are taking the lead on this one.
We are. Okay. All right. So it's looking to me like the popcorn may be, well, every time I think it's slow. Let's go ahead and start.
Let's go. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and start. So here you have us, your three presenters, Nick Carls, Claire Panzer, that's me, and Lisa Olson, our newest member, who is joining us today to speak for the first time and not just merely be gorgeously ornamental.
Well, we've told her that if she screws it up, well, her job basically depends on her performance today. So
right. No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure.
So just a quick reminder to everyone that we do not provide legal advice or legal opinions. We are giving you information regarding the status of compliance and things that relate to employee benefits. So don't be thinking this is legal advice. And we always encourage you, if you have further questions, either to reach out to us, but to be sure to discuss with your own counsel as well.
Yeah. And we do have the Q&A function open, and I'll be monitoring as we go through here. So if you have any questions, be sure to shoot them into the Q&A, and we'll answer some of them live. And if we have enough time at the end, we'll answer some at the end as well.
Okay, so we are going to start off. And one thing that we really want to underscore here is that specific advice about Medicare can be very, very difficult to give. Medicare and CMS very rightly try to protect people who are 65 and older or who have a certain disability and are on Medicare. They really want trained individuals who are certified by CMS to discuss specific circumstances. So your Holmes Murphy experience team can give you names and information of certified people who can speak to specific Medicare issues, but there are a couple of truly, truly great resources that you can route employees to at any time. One is the Medicare website, which is linked here. And I should say, yes, you are going to be getting a copy of this presentation by the end of the week. So you will have the presentation, the recording, and the links that are included here. The other one is the goofily named Medicare and You Handbook. It does update annually. It comes in a large text version that people can download or that they can read online. And when I tell you, it really is simply written and designed for anybody who does not understand how any of this works to really understand the interaction of Medicare and other coverages that they may have, including employer coverage. It really, really does. So do not hesitate to provide items like this to your employees if they have questions or concerns about Medicare. Then you can reach out to your employee benefits team, and we can help provide additional resources if your employees should need them.
Yeah, we get the question all the time. Hey, our employee wants to know, should they take this Medicare plan? Should they do that with Medicare? Should they wait to take Medicare? And it's one of those things where we'd love to answer, but that's something that is very particular to the individual, and they have to work with a certified advisor. You don't want to be in the shoes of the certified advisor either. When they ask you those questions, provide them with the resources and tell them it's really important that they talk to someone that's knowledgeable about it, that can look at their unique situation. You don't want to be the one telling them yes or no on Medicare.
Not at all. So with that said, Lisa, you want to kick us off by talking about parts A, B, C, and D and what they are?
I sure do. Thanks for trusting me with this part of Medicare. So we'll start with parts A and B. These are the two parts that kind of made up the original Medicare. And so sometimes you'll hear it referred to as original Medicare or traditional Medicare, but I think original Medicare is the real term for it. Your part A is going to include kind of all the services that are medically necessary when you are an inpatient in a hospital. So that includes your room, your meals. Part B is going to be the medical insurance portion, and that is doctor services, labs, tests. That kind of is more so the outpatient portion of the services. So I think it's helpful to think inpatient for part A and outpatient for part B. And that also includes like medical equipment and other items for when you're at home sometimes. Part C is going to be the parts that are A and B. These are going to be provided by approved insurance companies. These are private companies that package these together, and they have to provide at least the same benefits as part A and part B, and some also provide additional benefits like vision or dental. Part D is
I'm going to jump in for 1 second. So if you think of part A as outpatient, part B as inpatient, then you can think of part C as something that is more likely analogous to your group health plan that you would have through an employer. These are just simple ways to keep these straight in your mind.
Yes. And so part D, prescription drug coverage. This usually covers the generic prescription drugs and also brand name prescription drugs. And these also have to be approved by Medicare. They are run by commercial insurance companies or other private companies. And that's easy to remember because it's D for drug.
Perfect. Medicare supplement plans are designed to fill in coverage gaps because despite the fact that we'd like to think that original Medicare covers everything, it doesn't. For example, it has a weird gap in the beginning where it doesn't cover the first 3 pints of blood if someone has to receive blood. So little things like that, the supplement plans are designed to address. These are standardized policies. They are the same types of coverage. They'll be available in Philadelphia, Dallas, Denver, no matter where you may be located. These policies are named A through N, originally, crazy. And they're sold by insurers. The only difference is the price, and the price is really based on, the statistical area, where you live and what those costs are. So that's kind of the basic landscape of what you're talking about when you're talking about Medicare. Now, Part A automatically kicks in when someone starts taking Social Security distributions. It could be elected if somebody doesn't take their distributions. And electric coverage is going to go back retroactively 6 months from the date whenever that person started taking Social Security benefits or the date they signed up for coverage. And because this is kind of confusing, we do have an example that talks about this coming up on another couple of slides. The main thing to really realize here is if someone has already signed up for Medicare Part A and is receiving their Social Security retirement benefits, they cannot contribute to an HSA. And this panics a lot of people because sometimes they don't realize this and they've started taking Part A and the retirement benefits, and then all of a sudden they realize they can't put anything pre-tax into their HSA any longer. So they want to know what they can do. Well, they can disenroll from Part A, but what they have to do, they've got to pay back any Social Security retirement benefits that they had received to this point. And if they had used any part of their hospitalization, they've got to pay back anything that they had used as well. So you can see this is a huge pain in the butt and sometimes requires actually going down to the Social Security office to do this.
Yep.
So you can see why this is rarely done. And then someone can choose to sign up for Part A, disenroll from it, and then sign up for it again when a special enrollment period comes about. And we are certainly going to be talking about the special enrollment periods, because the other piece about Medicare is that in addition to trying to protect these people who are turning 65 and getting these benefits, the other thing that CMS is determined to do is create as many options as they possibly can for people to enroll throughout the year. So here's a retroactive coverage example. We have an employee, Elsa, who works for the Maroon Company. She is currently 66 in 2024. She works full time. She's covering herself and her husband. She's on a high deductible health plan and she participates in an HSA. So obviously she's currently Medicare eligible. She has chosen not to join Part B. She is not receiving Part A distributions yet. She wants to retire when she's 70. 70th birthday is going to be in 2028. And she's still contributing to that HSA plan. Because she did not join Medicare when she turned 65, you now see the 6-month look back period coming into play. So if she joins Medicare as of January 1, 2028, and when you sign up for Medicare, you're automatically eligible the first of that month that you sign up. So she joins Medicare as of January 1, 2028. Her look back period began on July 1st, 2027. So the last month she could put pre-tax dollars into her HSA was June 2027.
Beautiful. And Claire, we had a good question. They're
Good.
asking for confirmation that if someone's taking Social Security distributions before age 65, that they are not eligible for Part A until age 65 is reached. That's generally confirmed unless they're getting Social Security disability. If
Right.
you're a Social Security disability, then you could have Medicare Part A before
Yes.
age 65.
Yep, that's correct. That is correct. Okay, so
And
that's
then
our
we have
example.
another question that we're going to do live real quick here is if the company deposits into the HSA, is that okay? If the individual has Medicare coverage during that look back period, then they're ineligible for those HSA contributions. So you can't have employee or employer contributions to the HSA if the individual has Medicare during that time.
I would say you can't have them pre-tax. You could do them after tax, which I don't know why anybody would choose to do because it kind of defeats the purpose. But but the wisest thing to do is to stop all of those contributions. Definitely.
Yes.
Okay. Part B, the inpatient piece. Pardon me, the outpatient piece, as Lisa told us. This does require an active election. And there are, as you're going to see here, a number of times people can enroll. So there's an initial enrollment period that extends to a 7-month period, 3 months before somebody turns 65, includes the month that they turn 65, and then 3 months after they turn 65. Then there is a general enrollment period. And there are late enrollment penalties that might apply here if people have not applied, if people have not had other coverage in place when they were first eligible for Medicare or within 8 months of losing that employer-sponsored coverage. So the point that we are trying to make here is that COBRA coverage and retiree coverage are not considered to be active employment.
Yeah.
So if you have an employee who is going out on COBRA and that person is already 65, they have got to sign up for Medicare within 8 months of being on COBRA, or they are likely going to have to pay a penalty when they sign up for Part B.
Yeah, and this is a big enough deal that there are bills in Congress right now looking to address this, because there are a number of individuals that will take retiree coverage or COBRA coverage, thinking that they don't have to sign up for Medicare. And then they find out, month 9, month 10,
Yeah.
that they have missed their special enrollment window and that they have to now pay a penalty forever due to their late enrollment.
This
And
comes
then-
up Nick, I was just going to add, this comes up every year. Congress is so pro this, but it typically gets attached to some bill that somebody doesn't like. So we come down to the end of the year, the end of the congressional term, and it doesn't pass. But this is on Congress's radar because this is a great, easy fix that does have bipartisan support. We just have to get it into its own bill so it doesn't get kicked out of Congress.
Yeah. And as we go on to the next slide here, just to quickly answer a couple of the HSA questions that came in. It's not a big deal. If someone was contributing to an HSA when they shouldn't have been because they had Medicare coverage, whatever, they're just doing a curative distribution. If you think back to our HSA mini that we did last month or the month before, remember, I had to do a curative distribution this year myself. I over contributed by about $400, not good at math. So I did a curative distribution, same thing for them. We decided to retire, and it turns out we went back 6 months. We're just going to do a curative distribution for the 6 months and pay some tax on it.
But you've got to do it within the tax year, don't you?
Yep, by April 15th.
Yeah.
So that usually gives you a decent amount of runway. We just want to be cognizant that if we suddenly have that 6 months retroactive Medicare coverage, that it might impact those HSA contributions. We might need to do a curative distribution.
Yep. All right, so we have a general enrollment period that extends from January 1 to March 31st, and an annual enrollment that also extends October 15th through December 7th. You have that. You have your own enrollment period when you turn age 65 within that 7-month period. There are plenty of opportunities for people to join. We just need people to understand that they no longer have group coverage at this point when their employer coverage ends, no matter what other coverage they are putting in place. So, Medicare secondary payer. Medicare secondary payer is a very, very interesting law that covers a broad range of items. One of the first things it says is that if an employer has 20 or more employees, then that group health plan is going to pay primary before Medicare pays secondary. Medicare secondary payer rules don't generally apply to retiree plans, and it is possible to term someone's individual COBRA coverage if they become entitled to Medicare after they elect COBRA. It's not a violation of Medicare secondary payer rules. But note, there are 2 circumstances where an employer has to be extremely aware about Medicare and not make the mistake of not offering group coverage or COBRA coverage because of Medicare status. So clients can't discourage employees from enrolling in the group health plan. They can't incentivize or induce someone to take Medicare over the group health plan. The employer also can't refuse to offer COBRA coverage because someone already has Medicare. So what needs to be stressed here is if you are educating all employees about Medicare, about someone's status, about what options are available, that's one thing. That's what you're trying to do. But if you have vendors come in that are offering comprehensive and individualized education for employees, we need to be paying attention to that and making sure that they're doing it in such a way that they're not overly encouraging someone to join Medicare and leave that employer's coverage. And Lisa did the research on this one. I thought it was very interesting. The penalties can include a potential re-adjudication of claims, which is always a pain in the butt for everyone. and about, $12,000 violation for, each person whose sort of rights have been violated under this. So there are very big penalties, and CMS is incredibly, incredibly hard and firm on this issue. Nick, did you have anything you wanted to add on this one? Oh, you're on mute, darling.
Yep. There's an interesting question that came in. And it was, can you discourage someone from taking Medicare and encourage them to stay on the group health plan? It's not going to be a violation of the Medicare secondary payer rules, but that goes back to that opening slide we had, where there is concern that you've now advised them on what to do with Medicare. And if you didn't do it correctly, if it somehow is not beneficial to them, you've stepped in this the shoes of a Medicare advisor, and you probably don't want to do that. And then Claire,
You don't.
You don't. And we have gotten a ton of questions on HSAs,
Okay.
ton. So we'll
Okay.
address some of them at the end. But one of the other things I wanted to note is your spouse's Medicare enrollment or entitlement has no impact on your ability to contribute to an HSA and how much you contribute to an HSA. So the spouse, you can forget about the spouse. As long as the individual who wants to contribute to the HSA does not have impermissible other coverage, you're just fine. And on top of that, since we were talking about HSAs, remember, it is the individual's responsibility to know whether or not they are eligible to make HSA contributions. Not you as the employer. You can try to educate, but that HSA is owned by the individual. The responsibility sits with the individual. And so any kind of corrections or actions that need to be taken, it falls on the individual. Sorry, just want to get those out.
I think that's a really critical point. The employer is responsible for the employer contributions. So that's where we want you to look out for yourselves for sure, because you don't want to get into trouble in that way with that 6-month look back period, especially. Anything else, Nick?
No, now that they get to listen to you and I do the back and forth where I'm like, yeah, sure. But I mean, the employer's not expected to know. And so you'd want your money back, obviously, but ultimately the employer doesn't really get in trouble for it. It's the employee's responsibility to manage that when all said and done.
They could lose money, but
That exactly.
that's all. That's all.
Exactly. That's all. It's just money.
Small beans, small beans. So Medicare secondary payer rules. So there's that small employer exception where we talked about the fact that Medicare pays primary for employers with fewer than 20 employees. There are also some exceptions for employers with fewer than 100 employees when people are on Medicare due to a disability. And there's also a limited exception here after 30 months for people who are on Medicare because they have ESRD. Now, this is a very tricky area that, frankly, Claire, speaking personally, feels is being exploited by a lot of dialysis companies. But we can certainly help you. Lisa's right when she wrote that the rules get rather complicated. They certainly do. And we're more than happy. The compliance team and your Holmes Murphy experience team is more than happy to work with you relative to the ESRD situation, making sure your employees get what they need. And we keep everyone well protected under the law. Oh, carrier benefit reductions. I think this is an interesting one that I'm really starting to see more and more often. So when Medicare's primary payer, a lot of carriers are starting to reduce a benefit amount available to someone who was eligible for Part B but elected not to take it, right? So the amount is generally reduced by the benefit amount to which that person would have been entitled if they had enrolled under Medicare Part B. And we will typically get a lot of questions from clients. And the big one that comes in, is this legal? Heck yeah, it is. It's crappy, but it's legal. So just be aware of that. Now, there is under Medicare secondary payer, and I think this is the big one that a lot of people think of, the Section 111 reporting obligation. We are required, it actually applies to employers, frankly. It's just that carriers and TPAs have this information and the reporting is so complicated, we allow them to do it. And what it does is it's a quarterly report that goes to CMS and it tells them exactly who's Medicare eligible, who is, who's on Medicare and who isn't. Because CMS is actually going through these reports at a painfully slow pace to ensure that they are only paying primary when they are required to do so. Here's the problem for our clients. CMS sends the plan sponsor a demand letter to recover any kind of mistaken payment, and it's usually years after. And it can be when a client has left the particular TPA who was handling the reporting and who was paying the claims at that time. So in many circumstances, the self-funded plan sponsor is going to be responsible for reimbursing those dollars. If you are fully insured and you have switched carriers, obviously it's an older carrier that's going to be responsible for this. And so your Holmes Murphy experience team will definitely help you reach out to the previous carrier and get things taken care of from that standpoint. But CMS is very far behind. These letters are odd looking. They almost look as though they're not real. I don't know how to describe it. They almost look as though there's a spam or a phishing exercise. So please feel free to share those with your Holmes Murphy team when you receive one. And then we can help you analyze it and take it from there. Nick, anything to add? Lisa, anything to add? Okay. All right, so we're moving on to the lovely creditable coverage notice. So the Medicare Modernization Act requires employers, if their prescription drug policy, if they have a prescription drug coverage policy, to notify Medicare eligible people whether their prescription drug coverage is creditable, meaning it's going to pay about as much as the standard Part D coverage. So this is an annual notice that goes out to, now, the way the law is written, yes, it says all Medicare eligible people, but we know most employers are not paying attention to that. And almost everybody puts this in their benefit enrollment guide because you'll hit your Medicare eligible individuals. So don't be dismayed by that language. You don't just have to send this information to those individuals. You can send it to everybody. Prior to October 15th each year, and at different times as stated in the regulations, including when someone is joining Medicare for the first time, has one of those special enrollment periods, etc. Nick, I'm seeing your light.
I'm looking at questions, and I'm
Okay.
been ready to roll as soon as we get through this last slide.
Okay.
Knock
Yeah.
out as many of them as possible.
Okay, all right. I think this is almost our last slide. With many drug design options and unique tools, it's possible a plan may not be creditable for Part D. What's the practical impact? Kind of not a whole lot. Medicare eligible people must pay a late enrollment penalty, but if they can take that Part D notice and show CMS, hey, my employer said this was creditable, I was relying on this information, you can have the penalty removed. The employer is not penalized for a lack of creditable coverage. So to make you aware of that, this is sort of a kind of a distinction without a difference. We want that Part D notice to be as accurate as possible. But if it can't be, at this point, it's not necessarily the end of the world. Now, there are some proposed regulations in place that are have not been finalized yet that could have an impact on how we assess credibility for these prescription plans, but more on that to come when something gets finalized. And that's a big thank you. Let's go ahead with any questions in any remaining time.
Right. Yes, let's grip and rip here. Are Advantage plans limited by in-network providers? Can you use an out-of-network? My understanding was that based on the Advantage plan that you purchased, you did have a network that you had to use.
Yep, that's my understanding as well. Do you have to enroll for parts A and B? No, as a matter of fact, you can't. I mean, you are Medicare eligible, but since Part C duplicates all the Part A and B, you can't use both Part C and Parts A and B, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we got Bruce pointed out that there is no after-tax HSA contribution. I mean, someone could contribute to their HSA and choose not to deduct it on their taxes, I
Yeah.
suppose. I don't know, Claire, we'd have to look at that one again because I don't know how that works. If you can make that after-tax or you get an after-tax one that you don't take a deduction, if you can still do that even if you're on Medicare. That I've never seen that, so that's something
I
I
don't
wouldn't.
think anybody would do it.
Sure. With the next question, how big are the penalties that we're talking about? Well, with Part B, when that question was asked, it's up to 10% of the
Yeah.
Part B premiums, and that can apply basically as long as someone is on Medicare. That we answered that one.
If an employee is on retiree coverage but not active, they would still need to sign up within 8 months. Absolutely.
That's correct.
That's why
because
you
retiree
see,
coverage.
that's why
Right.
you see so many pre-65 retiree plans. You know, that coverage usually ends at that point, and that's kind of the signal to the retiree, whoops, jump off onto Medicare.
Yep, exactly. If they don't sign up for Part B, if they're not getting onto Medicare, they're just paying that penalty, and it's ultimately on that employee to manage their own Medicare enrollment as well as anything else that goes along with it. This is the individual, and that's why we start off by saying the individual needs to work with a certified Medicare advisor.
Yeah.
Think of what's best for them, and they should be aware of that as they're approaching age 65.
But one thing I would clarify about that question, if I'm still on Holmes Murphy's plan and I'm 66, I don't have to have signed up for Medicare,
Right.
nor will I pay a penalty as long as I do sign up within that 8-month period after my Holmes Murphy coverage would have ended. So as long as you have employer coverage, you're all right. You're not incurring that penalty, yet.
Yep. Once again, if you're doing upfront HSA contributions, and so you contributed to someone, and then later on in the year, it turns out they had retroactive coverage or they joined Medicare. So there are months where they weren't eligible for an HSA contribution in which they received one. It's up to that employee to do the curative distribution. You can go back and watch our HSA mini because it gets into that whole difficulty of getting the money back from the employee when that's the case. You're usually just asking them nicely to return the funds if they have to do a curative distribution involves some of your contributions. These rules do not apply to health FSAs like they do HSAs. FSAs, I can be 75 and on Medicare for a decade, and I can still have my FSA, no problem. Let's see here. We've addressed a lot of HSA questions. I'm going to set those aside because we do address them in our HSA mini.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of the small employer exception to the secondary pay rules? Basically just that in a situation where a small employer is being forced to pay primary, it could tank the employer's plan if they're forced to be primary, if they have 5 people on the plan or something like that. I think that I'm assuming that was the logic behind it. Yep. Anytime someone's on, go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead. Go to the disability one.
Yep. I was just gonna say, anytime that someone has Medicare, even if it's due to disability, that would be seen as impermissible other coverage, which would preclude their ability to contribute to an HSA. A TPA is a third-party administrator.
Third-party administrator, yes. So, that's what, if you are a self-funded plan, likely you are working with a third-party administrator. And I also have seen HSA custodians refusing to make those corrective distributions. We can only ask. Some of them will refuse, as Bruce has noted.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm gonna have to reach out to this individual. He's got some good information. I look forward to picking his brain on a couple of things. Let's see here.
If the Part D notice is in your benefit summary, are you required to mail it out to everyone via the United States Postal Service? Well, part of this is going to depend on whether or not you fall within the DOL rules. You might be able to have something in a benefit summary and post it electronically and not have to mail it. But if it's in the benefit summary and it's being handed out to everybody, you probably are not going to need to duplicate that by another mailing.
All right, team. And here's the thing. We will be providing these slides. We will be providing the recording. We're coming up on 5 minutes after, and we have a lot of good questions. If we didn't get a chance to get to your question, as I always say, this doesn't have to be the end of the conversation. We're always happy to talk about this stuff. We love talking about this stuff, love digging into it. So reach out to your Holmes Murphy representative. They know how to get in touch with us. And we can, have a one-on-one conversation about anything that we didn't get a chance to address today. That's the fun of it. We can talk about this as much as you want us to. So reach out, let us know. Otherwise, we really do appreciate you joining us today.